I'm starting. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
Hello, Mrs. Lewin. This is not just a polite greeting. I truly appreciate you accepting my invitation. I would love to learn from your work on twinship. And welcome to Psikomitoloji YouTube channel as well. I am Batuhan Saç. I work as a psychotherapist. I have some question for you to understand what twinship is. At the same time, I want to better understand the dynamics of twins within the, I like to say that, world of singletons.
Mhm.
Uh, First of all, I would like to receive you, Vivienne Lewin, a senior psychoanalytic psychotherapist based in Northwest London, with a special interest in twin relationship. A fellow of the British Psychotherapy Foundation, previously a training psychotherapist and a supervisor for many years. Although retired from long-term clinical practice, continues to offer psychoanalytic service, including consultation for twins and their parents, twin therapy, research consultation, psychoanalytic supervision, and training assessment.
Mhm.
Uh, Worked in full-time privacy practice for 1981 to 2012, and also provided psychotherapeutic assessment in GPs practice for 7 years. Main years focuses on twin relationship and development. Has published numerous papers and two books: The Twin in the Transference and The Twin Enigma. Emphasize the importance of understanding the twin transference in psychotherapy. Also interest in links between psychoanalytic thought, art, and creativity. For a longer biography, you can visit Vivienne Lewin's website. With your permission, I will begin. I'm very curious about your answers.
Mhm. Well, thank you
Uh,
very much for that introduction. I'm pleased to be here. Thank
you're
you.
welcome. What are the good and bad sides of having twin? I mean, advantage and disadvantage. You talk about twins never being alone with their caregiver. The word never. I remember when I reading the articles of you, the word never stood out to me. It felt very strong. What do you think about that?
Um, right, it's a big question. um, Let me start with the end of that question, why I put never in capital letters. I did that to emphasize the fact that twins are never alone with the caregiver, mother, father, whoever, because even if they are alone in the room, say with mother, mother also has in mind the other baby who is not in the room, who's either sleeping or with father, or even if the other twin has died. Mother is always aware of both twins, and the one will always remind her of the other, which is why I emphasized it, because people think that, if the one baby's out of the room, then they have the present baby has mother to itself, but it doesn't, because mother has the other in mind all the time.
Hmm. Um, that's very important. Is always being together and sharing everything, really everything. The main part of being twin.
Well, they that's quite complicated. They're not necessarily always together and always sharing. Um, they are always in some way present in mind. Um, and there is always a sense that parents need to treat twins equally. If one has something, the other one must have it. But it doesn't always work out like that. And quite often, the more enlightened parents will cater much more to the needs of each individual baby rather than, or child, rather than a sense that they have to equalize everything, that everything has to be equal for each of them or the same for each of them. And really, parents these days know that they spend individual time with each child separately from the other. Make time to develop the individuality out of each of the twins as they grow up. And that's always a very important part of each twin becoming their own separate person, as well as being a twin. So being a twin is an indelible part of the identity of each twin, but it's not the only thing about them. They're also individual, different people. And even, I never use the term identical twins because twins are never identical. They may look very alike, and monozygotic twins, as I call it, one egg twins, have very similar genetic makeup. But that's really only one part of the story. And I know from my work that each individual twin is a separate individual and they are different, and they're different in personality, they're different in likes and dislikes, they're different in all sorts of ways. While maybe there's facial similarity and they're mistaken for each other, and they may have mannerisms that are very similar. But each is a separate individual with a separate personality, a separate mind, and a separate way of being.
So, what do you say instead of identical?
Monozygotic, that means one egg. So that's MZ for short, because there are basically two types of twins, although there are occasionally other aberrations. There are monozygotic twins, that are twins which both develop from one egg, where the egg splits shortly after fertilization, and two eggs are created, and then two fertilized embryos are created. And those are monozygotic, or commonly called identical twins, who share a lot of their genetic material. The other kind of twin is a dizygotic twin, which is two egg. So there are two eggs that are fertilized at the same time. And as people say, genetically, they are no more or less similar than ordinary siblings in terms of genetic makeup. But they too develop their own personalities and individualities.
I need to ask more about that. What do you think about twins often excluding each other when they are with their caregivers? Does a twin have to exclude his brother or her sister while being cared for? One more. Maybe I can also add this, if there is no mistake. Is a tendency toward paranoia in twinship present here?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that, Batuhan. That's
the second one?
Both parts, yeah. I think let me rephrase that. I would say that each twin would want to try and claim all of mother's attention or father's attention. And you do see them vying for attention, trying to, competing with each other for attention. But within part of that, they would try and exclude the other twin. They may push the other twin aside or something like that. But the fact is, they're both always present in body or in mind. The second bit you say about paranoia, I don't think I would apply that in that situation unless there was something pathological going on.
I'm paranoia. Maybe I mean attack and after and counter attack. Um,
Well, there may or may not be. You know, there will be aspects of that. It's all very complex. There'll be aspects of them having a go at each other, but there'll also be aspects of them doing stuff together in a very exclusive way to the twins. And so that, you know, you referred to Dorothy Burlingham's work, and one of those sets of twins, Bert and Bill, as I remember, teamed together to defeat outsiders. And in a way, they did that because they realized they could get more power that way. And they had a very exclusive relationship. And I think that that is really quite problematic because they were born during the war and were cared for in the Hampstead nurseries. They were not with their parents, and however good the caregivers were, and I'm sure they were very good, they were always treated as twins. And I've seen some of the documents at the Anna Freud Clinic where you see them being compared constantly, day to day, minute by minute. Bert does this, Bill does that, and then a comment on the side by the caregiver. So constantly compared one with the other rather than being treated as individual people. And I think that led to them becoming quite what I would call a toxic twinship, in which the twin relationship was more important than individual development for each of them.
I was thinking about when a twin is with his mother, does he think I am taking someone else's thing?
Mm-hmm.
This is
Yes.
important, I think, right?
Yeah, I think it might be. Yes, I've won. I've got victory this time. I'm the one that's got mother's attention. But that twin will also know that that will change. And at other times, the other twin will have mother's attention.
Yeah, I remember from Bible or other stories.
Yes.
We talk as if we were sure who the first object is for individuals or singletons. But what about twins? How does their twin bond cast a shadow over their relationship with the caregiver?
I think that's a very important question because one of the things I came to recognize through my work and through my very extensive research when I wrote my first book, The Twin in the Transference, was that the other twin can be seen by, each twin can be seen by the other twin as a primary object, like mother and like father. And because they are there and very connected unconsciously as well as consciously from before birth. So that in utero, although babies are basically asleep until they're born, there will be some sense of interaction in utero in the last 3 months of the pregnancy. And that interaction, I mean, people glamorize it and attribute all sorts of motivations to it. I think it's not quite as it seems. They are moving about. There's not enough space. They push and pull each other. They may stroke each other or appear to stroke each other. But basically what happens is their brains are developing, and they are developing what I call sensate memories. That is, memories that are not verbal memories or visual memories, but sensate. They're part of sensing each other. And they are the sorts of memories that are not really verbalizable. They're somatic. And we can approximate what we think they are. But twins have those those sensate somatic memories, pre-verbal memories, as part of the core of the twin relationship. And so the fact that they start with that, they're then born into a world where mother's and father's attention, everybody's attention, is always divided because there are two of them. It's always divided in mind and often in person. And that there are what I call twinning, which are interactions between the twins, which build up the quality of the twin relationship. So it can be all sorts of interactions, whether it's hostile or loving or competitive, or whatever, all of the human conditions, really. And all of those interactions also add to this mix. And so the twin, the other twin is a primary object for the twin, for each twin, is an important part of the twin identity. It becomes problematic when, excuse me, when the twinship becomes more important, becomes more of a focus for the twins than their relationships with the people around them, with mother, father, siblings, aunts, uncles, peers, whoever, friends. And in those situations, you get what I call a very enmeshed twin relationship, where the twins are deeply connected with each other and have difficulty leading separate and individual lives. And I see this in my work in twin therapy with twin pairs, that occasionally I'll be working with a pair that is so enmeshed with each other that it's very hard for either of them actually to break away and have individual lives, or even to allow me as the therapist to intervene, to try and unpack what is going on, to try and help them understand. And I've developed various techniques for trying to do that. But those are the more problematic end of the twin relationships. And most twin relationships are not like that, although there is always an element of the very important other twin always present.
I guess the physical memory part is very important.
The memory? Yes.
Physical memory.
Somatic yes, the somatic memory. Yeah.
Somatic memory.
Yeah. It's part of it. It's part of it. It's the somatic memory, the twinning processes, the projection and introjection from the other twin, what belongs to one, what belongs to the other, what does one twin want to project into the other? Is it the undesirable bits of itself it doesn't like, or is it appropriating good qualities that the other twin has, admired qualities, envied qualities? It's such a complex interaction, as all development is.
I wonder, where is the father positioned in the twins story? There is an important sentence in your book. Could you talk more about that? I'm reading your sentence in the introduction on page 3. Placing father in the picture would create 6 pairs and 4 triads, thus complicating the picture further. Can you talk more about that? I think it's an important sentence.
Yeah, it's a rather schematic way of looking at it. So ordinarily, with a singleton, you have 3 pairs. There are 3 players. There's mother, father, and baby. When you have twins, you have mother, father, baby 1, mother, father, baby 2, and twin baby 1, baby 2, mother, baby 1, baby 2, father. So it's just a much more complex setup. And it was just really a rather schematic way of trying to present the complexity of that situation.
Where is the father positioned in a twin study? What do you think about that?
Sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Where is the father positioned in the twins study.
Public, did you say?
Father. Um, I can repeat it. Um, where is the father positioned in the twins story?
I still can't get that, sorry.
Okay.
You can
Uh,
rephrase it.
uh, I wonder father's
Oh, father.
importance. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
father
father. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
importance
Yeah.
from twins story.
Yeah. Well, he's very much part of it. I mean, mother and father are a pair of both, or the two parents, whether it's mother and father, or two women, or two men, or whatever it is. They are a pair. Um, and they are a pair also, if we go back to, psychoanalytic theory about fantasies and the Oedipal fantasies. Mother, father are the creative couple of the family. And so father is an integral part of it. And, these days when fathers play a much bigger part in their children's upbringing, people say, well, father is just as important as mother. Yes, that's absolutely right. But when I talk about mother and father, I'm talking really about the function of. So the mothering function is much more about the gestational, the giving birth to the baby, the feeding the baby, the receptiveness to the baby. And in a way, the way I visualized it is a father is hopefully, very much part of all of that. But his function is different. And I describe it as vertebrating the mother. So the father presents, in a way, an organizing structure within which this mother baby pair can function.
Um, I got it. The other question in my mind, in chapter 4 of your book, the twin in transference, you talk about being mother of twins.
Mm-hmm.
What is that experience like? Do all twin mothers feel guilt, helplessness, and struggle?
Well, from my discussions with, because I do not have twin children, so I can't speak from my own experience. But I do know mothers of twin children and have interviewed the mothers in a mothers group for mothers of twins. And there was amongst a lot of them, amongst many of them, in fact, probably most, a sense of guilt that when you've got two babies, you can't give your full attention to either one. You've always got to give attention to one or the other at any moment. Um, Even if you're feeding both at the same time, you're looking from one to the other, from one to the other. You don't just have, when a mother, it's such a lovely picture, when a mother's feeding a baby, bottle or breastfed, it doesn't matter. There's a sense of the baby and the mother looking at each other, the gaze between them, the mother's gaze. And I think the gaze is not just the looking, it's about the holding in mind. It's the baby is filling mother's mind at that time, and mother is filling baby's mind, and the satisfaction of that. Whereas when you've got twins, it's divided. Either she's feeding them both together, which people do very successfully, but she's still looking from one to the other. Or they're being fed at different times. Maybe they're woken up at different times. Or someone else is feeding the other twin. Maybe one twin, I've come across sometimes, one twin will breastfeed, the other one can't manage it, will be bottle fed, so someone else is feeding the other twin. But it's always divided. Yeah.
Books about twins often talk about them recognizing each other. What does it mean? What does it tell us about their bond? Recognizing each other. What does it mean?
I'm not really sure quite what that means. The thing is, there's a lot of mythology about twins. I'm not talking about Greek mythology and stuff, but kind of current mythology. And for instance, on work, so-called research done on twins that are separated at birth. And then instantly on seeing each other, there's a bond and they know each other and they both love blue cars and red dresses, you know, whatever it is. Quite frankly, that's nonsense. That research is very flawed, and what you know, they're two people that will come together in that situation, who will maybe recognize something, and if they look very similar, it's quite startling, as we know from the uncanny, you know, similar looks, doubles, etc. But recognizing each other, I think what I would say, I mean, I don't know the context in my book that you've taken that from, but what I would say is they always have a particular resonance with each other. So that twins that have grown up together have an indelible bond, whatever that bond is, and it's different for every single pair of twins. It is there, and it is there for all of their lives, whether they're alive or dead. You know, if one twin dies at birth or during life or whatever, it's still always present as the missing twin. And for parents where twin babies are born and one twin dies at birth, they are then having to deal with both grief and joy at the same time. So they've got one lovely live baby, and they've also got to grieve their dead baby. And that will really complicate the emotional resonances between them all and the relationship with them.
I read a wonderful article about missing twin of George Engel.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, his twin died. And when he, 11 months later, at the end of the Jewish period of mourning, had a heart attack, thinking, you know, the other shoe has fallen. Yeah, it's a lovely paper, that. Yes.
Yeah.
But he did survive it. He didn't die.
Really?
I think he survived it, yes. He survived it to write the paper.
Sorry. How are twins shown in Shakespeare, the Bible, and other big stories? In the Bible and Shakespeare stories, twins are shared between mother and father. Why is this? How does this affect twins' relationship? You remember in the Bible and Shakespeare stories, twins share them between mother and father. One twin near to father, the other twin will near to father.
I don't recall that. I mean, the stories that I've written about and remember are, for in Shakespeare, there's Twelfth Night and there's a Comedy of Errors. And the focus of that is on confusion and confusion of identity. And it's interesting because in A Comedy of Errors, there are two brothers who look very alike, who look identical. And one is a rogue and gets drunk and causes trouble and gets into debt, and the other is a very good public citizen. And, you know, the one goes to visit the other, and there's the confusion about who's who and how they keep missing each other. So creating dramatic tension, really. In the other play, Twelfth Night, the twins are a boy and a girl, but apparently they look so similar, they still pass as each other. So, there's a lot of poetic license in all of that. But in the Bible, I mean, it's much more to do with competitiveness, rivalry. So Jacob and Esau, yeah, and sort of fooling father in order to win the inheritance, or when father's on his deathbed. I think these stories are interesting because they illuminate something about why twins are so fascinating to us. And one of the reasons is to do with our own identity and a sense that if there are twins, if there are two babies that develop and grow up, and each makes different choices in life, and we question ourselves often, as an ordinary part of life. Gosh, if I'd done that, what would have happened? Where would I be now? If I hadn't married that man, what would I be now? What would have happened? And twins somehow seem to provide an opportunity for us to think along those lines, to look at what each of the twins did and think if I'd taken a different path, I'd be in a different life or being differently in my life. And so I think there's a lot of fascination with twins, as well as the fact that the similarity between twins and two babies being born at once, certainly in the more primitive societies, was considered a bad omen. And the bad gods had intervened and brought these two babies. And there's a lot of legendary stuff about that. And there's a lot of ritual practice in certain areas in Africa, much less now than there used to be, and the world actually, where one twin might be killed, or both twins killed, or mother and both twins killed, or they banished somewhere to cleanse the society. So in other groups, the twins are revered as gods, and great tribute is paid to them. So there's a lot written about that. There are encyclopedias written about all of that. But it's also part of the excitement that twins create in us, which is based on our own wishes, really, our own longing to be completely known, to be completely understood. And we believe somewhere that twins have got that, that twins completely know and understand each other. They have it's a perfect twin, a perfect relationship. And the reality is totally different. The twins, yes, they do know each other, but they are not each other. They are separate people who have to get to know each other.
In the story of Jacob and Esau, one twin teams up with his father, and the other team up with her mother.
Yeah.
That's why.
Right.
I asked.
Yes, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. And mother was part of the deceit, wasn't she? Yes.
Yeah,
She gave Esau a sheepskin.
Yes,
to pretend that he was Jacob. Yeah. Because father was blind and couldn't see. Well, father must have gone along with it because he wouldn't believe someone with a sheepskin was his son. So it was, was the other son. Yeah.
I have two questions now. You say we must consider war conditions when looking at Dorothy Burlingham's twin studies. I agree, but aren't these the real condition for twins? Isn't aggression and fighting part of their nature? That's why can Burlingham's findings apply to all twins? My question is this.
Well, I think aggression and fighting is part of everybody, really, in some, for some more than others. The reason I said that I thought the conditions were different, as I think I mentioned earlier on, was that in wartime, in those conditions, conditions were very constrained, were very difficult. The babies were in a nursery brought up by carers, not by their parents. They were treated just as the twins. There were other pairs of twins there as well, that were treated as twins. And they were quite useful for noting, comparing and doing that kind of research. But they weren't brought up in the loving arms of a family where there is plentiful food and you're safe from outside aggression. They were brought up in the war situation where there was massive privation and not enough food, and the parents, very stressed. I think the mother did visit, but she was not a constant presence. So I think from that point of view, with research, you have to take all factors into account. And the war and the deprivation it caused and the anxiety it caused as part of that. But yes, I think those particular emotions certainly are part of all people. But again, going back to Bert and Bill, the level of aggression between them and the world was very high. And who knows why some people develop that way. There are endless books written about that. Many reasons why that would be. But it could be that there wasn't enough parental loving intervention for them to feel loved and held.
I get it. I have one question about clinic practice of you. How do you understand the analyst's feeling of being trapped in the twin transference?
Well, let me go back. I wrote that book because I had been working with a number of patients who were a twin for quite a long time. And I had struggled with them. I worked psychoanalytically and I was interpreting, and yet I felt I was making no advance. We were not getting any further understanding. I felt trapped in a kind of an obsessive place where I had to be something and I couldn't understand it. And I thought, I'm not very good at this. Somebody else would do it better. Whenever I took those cases to supervision, the same feeling was just interpret this, just interpret that. It was all the usual kind of psychoanalytic interpretation, about what was going on and what relevance. And it was only, and I didn't have access to much research. And in fact, I later discovered there hadn't been very much research other than in the 1950s and 60s, in America mainly, but not solely, and Dorothy Burlingham's work and Anna Freud and those people. But it began to dawn on me that I was feeling very controlled in a rather obsessive way. And the one patient would say things like, "Oh, we've got similar skirts on today." I began to realize I was missing the twin in the transference twin inside myself, that I was being cast, projected into me was the twin. And that twin was both the missing twin, the twin who wasn't there in the room, but who was somewhere else, and the aspect of the patient that was a twin. So quite a complex mix of twin, as it always is. And that it changed all the time. As all transferences do, you've got to watch from moment to moment. I realized that this sense of being pinned down, being treated like a twinned object, was the twin transference, and that had to be interpreted. It seems as if I am your twin who is doing whatever. And that I found immediately started to free up the sessions and allow greater development, because in a way it's a parental intervention. The parents provide the creative developmental links, the twin can't, because, the twins are sort of stuck together in an immature way. And it was when I realized that and started interpreting the twin in the transference, not just all the other characters, the parents mainly, that I began to make a difference in those therapies. And I then found there's a wonderful research resource, which is, I don't know if you know, the PEP web, which psychoanalytic publishing, all at that stage, there were about 7 major psychoanalytic journals that had all their papers uploaded onto this platform and were searchable. And I then could, you pay to go on, and I could then do my research work in terms of the literature. And that's when I found all the stuff I did about the work in the 1950s and 60s, Marjorie Leonard and various other people in America who were doing work. And then the absence of that later. So gradually little bits of it, but the twin transference was largely ignored. And, it's not just the twin transference, the sibling transference, it's also ignored. And Juliet Mitchell has written a lot about that.
So, why are you working on twinship
now? Well, it happened by chance. I have a website, as you know, describing what I do, and some of my papers, all of my papers are up there, and listed my publications. And I found people were coming to me saying, I have a twin sister or a twin brother, and we've got a problem in our relationship, and could you see us to help us? Now, I'm not trained as a couple therapist or a marital therapist, but I have done some workshops for the organization here called Tavistock Relationships, which is about marital and couple therapy. So I know quite a lot about it, and I've done a couple of workshops for them on twins in marital relationships and twin relationships. And so I said, okay, well, I'll give it a try. And I've started gradually over a period of years seeing twin pairs and thinking about them in same terms as one thinks about marital or couple relationships. How are they relating? The focus is on the twin pair, not on any individual one. What is the interaction between them, and how can I help them understand each other better? And it just gradually developed from that. And increasingly, people are contacting me to ask me to help them with their twin relationship. And sometimes that is very helpful and useful to them. And, within a few sessions, I mean, I've had one of a twin pair saying to me, gosh, I'm getting to know my twin sister for the first time. Really getting to know them as a separate person. At other times, I find that they're so tied into each other that they cannot hear each other. And in exasperation, one day, I've not seen one pair like that for quite a long time. And I decided to try what is regarded as a conflict resolution method, in which I would say to each one, I was going to ask them a question. And I was going to ask each of them, and I wanted each one to answer, one to answer, and then the other to answer, for the other one to listen without judgment and without interruption, and then to tell us both what the first twin had said, and then repeat it on the other way. And it was very interesting that I found I could mostly get them to listen to each other. I did have to say, sometimes stop them, say no interruption, and could develop a bit more of an understanding of each other. And I hope the beginnings of a capacity for thinking, mature thinking, rather than just reacting to the other twin. So I've continued to do that. And I also do consultations for parents of twins just to help them understand what is going on, or for twins, for a twin that just needs to unpack what's going on. And then, if necessary, I'll refer them on for long-term individual therapy. So.
Thank you very much. I'm sure those working on this subject in Turkey will benefit a lot.
Well, thank you very much, and it's been very nice talking to you.